Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari, Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jamuna Tira Vanachari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jai Mr. Paramahansa Purajikacharya Sthurta Shishimar Divine Grace Shilai Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnu Paramahansa Purajikacharya Ashtotar Shishimar His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavindi Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna, everybody. Anand, I need at least you, Ananda.
Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Okay, you're there. Okay, so should I share the screen now?
Yeah, yes, Prabhu. So just okay. Yes, you should be able to share it, Prabhu.
Okay, it says here, host has disabled participant screen sharing.
It should be okay now, if you don't mind.
All right, let me try it again. All right, that looks good. Thank you. And I'll just click on this. Uh-oh. Can you see it?
And not, yes, we can see it.
All right, let me minimize this. And then, you know, I found some hotkeys.
Mhm.
I thought I could get this, but now I forgot what they are. Something F9. Okay. It says Alt. No, well, that's better. All right, I think we can go. We'll try it. We'll manage. Okay, so Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 So on this 21st day of February, on the Zoom call originating in San Diego and culminating in Scarborough, we're completing our study of Srimad Bhagavatam, translated and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Canto 1, Chapter 2, texts 6 through 21, or 6 through 21. And this is part 3, beginning with text 18, I believe. Let me make sure. No, text 17. All right, so we're getting these little things of it, but we'll work with it. Okay, so this is, now just before we begin this verse, just to let you know, there's a famous pamphlet called Reservoir of Pleasure. Many of you are familiar with that, I think. And that main essay in there, which is based on a lecture Srila Prabhupada gave, it begins with this verse. Srila Prabhupada, he doesn't chant the verse, but he's explaining it, and he goes through some of the verses that we're going to study today. So this is this part of the Bhagavatam has been immortalized in a reservoir of pleasure, and is also a book that I mentioned to Ananda Gauranga Prabhu yesterday, Dharma, the Way of Transcendence, which is precisely just like the teachings of Queen Kunti, the teachings of Lord Kapila Dev, is based on the verses that we're studying here, and of course the translations and Prabhupada's purports, and excerpts from talks that he gave on these very important verses. So that if someone is interested, they can procure that book. It's maybe there in the Toronto Temple. But we'll begin now with text 17. Shrinvatam Sukata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtanaha Ridyantaksto Yabhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma or super soul in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. And I pulled out some excerpt from the purport. Messages of the personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, are non-different from him. Whenever, therefore, offenseless hearing and glorification of God are undertaken, it is to be understood that Lord Krishna is present there in the form of transcendental sound, which is as powerful as the Lord personally. The Lord is reciprocally respondent to his devotees. When he sees that a devotee is completely sincere in getting admittance to the transcendental service of the Lord, and has thus become eager to hear about him, the Lord acts from within the devotee in such a way that the devotee may easily go back to him. The Lord is more anxious to take us back into his kingdom than we can desire. Most of us do not desire at all to go back to Godhead. Only a very few men want to go back to Godhead, but anyone who desires to go back to Godhead, Sri Krishna helps in all respects. So, Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara in cyclic succession. So just to put this verse in context, the whole question, this portion of the Srimad Bhagavatam spoken by Sutta Goswami is an answer to a question posed by the sages at Naimisharanya in chapter 1, text 11, I believe, in which they ask him to summarize all of the Shastras. It's too much for these Kali Yugites to study. And so give us the essence and tell us that process by which the soul can be completely satisfied. Yasyatma suprasidati. And so when Sutta Goswami begins, he uses that same phrase. So he says, Sabai pong sang parod dharmo yato bhaktir hokchajeya hitukya pariyata yayatma suprasidati. That same phrase is there. And what he's saying there is that that Dharma is supreme Dharma, Sabai pong sang parod dharma, which evokes pure love for Krishna. The bhakti hokchajeya, the devotion unto the transcendent Lord, which has to be free of all material motivation and uninterrupted to fully satisfy the self. And then he has a discussion of Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, the four general Purusharthas in the Vedic culture. And he explains there how Dharma is not meant for Artha. It's not meant for accumulating wealth. Rather, it's meant for evoking pure love for Krishna. And therefore, whatever wealth is gleaned by your Dharma should be used in the service of the Lord or for maintenance for a simple lifestyle, not for sense gratification. You may recall in that kamas in India, priti labo jivit yahavata. And that detachment naturally develops. The Vasudeva Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Janayat Yashu Vairagam Jnanam Chayarahoitikam. By serving Vasudeva or Krishna, one quickly develops knowledge and detachment, vairagyakam. And so what is life meant for if it's not meant for sense gratification, accumulating money? Jivasya tattva jigyasa. This is an echo from the very beginning of the Vedanta Sutra. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Here it's a Jivasya tattva jigyasa. One should be inquisitive into the absolute truth. And then what is that absolute truth? Vedanti tattva vedas is the tattvam yajnana brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdite. It's known in three phases according to the means of approach of the aspirant. Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. And that those three are realized, especially Bhagavan, by engaging in devotional service according to what is there in the revealed scriptures. And so then he describes that therefore Varnashram really is meant for pleasing Hari. Sangsiddhi Haritoshanam. And therefore, one should, this is a key verse, that Tasmad Ekena Manasa Bhagavan Satvatan Shotavya Kititabdacha Smart Jayat Pujasya Nityada. That with one pointed attention, one should hear and chant and remember the Lord and worship Him. So, and then one will get remembrance, the sword of remembrance. Yadanu Yasana Yukta Karma Grunti Nabandhanam. With that sword, one can cut all one's karmic bonds to this world and attain liberation, go back to Godhead. But to get that remembrance, one has to immerse oneself in hearing and chanting. And so one has to get the taste for that. And that was the previous verse. Shushusho Shradhanasya Vasudeva Kata Ruchi. How to get the ruchi, the taste for Vasudeva Kata, Krishna Kata. And that comes from serving the great souls, the great acharyas and spiritual master. So having gotten that taste, then this present verse comes. Shunvatam Sakata Krishna. And it's understood Krishna is within the heart as a super soul. And as it says here, when he sees that a devotee is completely sincere in getting admittance to the transcendental service of the Lord, and thus become eager to hear about him, the Lord acts from within the devotee in such a way that the devotee may easily go back to him. So what he does, he's purifying us of abhadras, of unwanted things, lust, anger, greed, illusion, all of these unfulfilled desires, fears, anxieties. All of those are results of our material engagement in this world. And Krishna, he's cleansing, vidunoti, from within. He's very happy to see that one of the uncounted souls in this world is actually making an effort to hear about him and go back. And so he helps from within. So many of you may know the Bhagavad Gita verse where Krishna says in the 10th chapter, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam tadami buddhi yogantam yena mamubhyantite. That to those who are very devoted and eager to come back to me and serve me, I give the intelligence by which they can come to me if they're trying to serve me with love and devotion. So that's what this verse is about. And the next verse will describe this the state that we come to, the position when a large part of that cleansing has taken place. So if you have questions, keep notes, and we're going to go through the whole thing, and then we can discuss later. So the next verse is 18. Nashta prayesha badreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavat uttama shloke bhakti bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. Okay, so Nashta Prayeshu. Prayeshu means almost completely. All right, let's read the little excerpt from the purport. There we go. So here, Prabhupada says, here is the remedy for eliminating all inauspicious things within the heart, which are considered to be obstacles in the path of self-realization. The remedy is the association of the Bhagavats. Notice that in this verse, there's Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, a constant service to the Bhagavats. And what there's two Bhagavats, as Prabhupada explained. The remedy is association of the Bhagavats. There are two types of Bhagavats, namely the book Bhagavat and the devotee Bhagavat. Both the Bhagavats are competent remedies, and both of them are, or either of them, can be good enough to eliminate the obstacles. A devotee Bhagavat is as good as the book Bhagavat because the devotee Bhagavat leads his life in terms of the book Bhagavat, and the book Bhagavat is full of information about the personality of Godhead and his pure devotees who are also Bhagavats. Bhagavat book and person are identical. So the idea is that Bhagavat means in relationship to Bhagavan, and the Mahabhagavat, such as Srila Prabhupada, he's completely saturated with pure devotional service to Krishna. Just coming in touch with him means you're going to hear about Krishna purely from the book Bhagavat, the message of the book Bhagavat. And he will also provide a wonderful example of what we're striving for. That's essential, that the acharya means is based on the word achar, which means behavior. And what is the qualifications of an acharya? That he knows the Shastra very thoroughly, lives his life according to the tenets of the Shastra, and he takes the trouble to try to preach and to bring others into the fold of Vaishnavism. So Srila Prabhupada personified that definition, certainly. So this, the Nashta Prayasha Bhadreshu, by the constant hearing and chanting, saturating ourselves, that in alone, the abhadras, the unwanted things in the heart, are destroyed by Krishna himself. And when a good portion of them, Prabhupada says in some lectures, maybe 75% or so forth, by constantly serving the book Bhagavat and the person Bhagavat through hearing and chanting and service, then Naishtiki Bhakti, you see this Bhakti Naishtiki. Some of you are familiar with those two verses that are near the beginning of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, quoted in the purport to Bhagavad Gita, and in the Nectar of Devotion, of course, explained the ladder from faith to love, from Shraddha to Prema. Very important to understand and where we are on that ladder. So it begins with faith, some preliminary faith, Shraddha. This is not strong and pure faith, but it's enough respect and interest to bring us into the association of devotees. And this is Sadhu Sangha. This is essential. And from that Sadhu Sangha, when we're open to being influenced by the devotees, we want to perform some bhajan, chanting Hare Krishna. And as soon as we perform some bhajana kriya, then the anartha nivritti starts. That's the same thing we're discussing here. The cleansing away of abhadras is the same thing as getting rid of anarthas, or things unwanted that are blockages in our devotion. So somewhere along the way in that bhajana kriya and anartha nivritti, we should want to be initiated, because that's a very important step to enter into the parampara, get the mercy of all the previous acharyas, and take vows and become serious. But so the anartha nivritti is going on, and as that's progressing, we come eventually to this stage of nishta. Notice the word naishtiki and nishta. There's different versions of the same word. And that nishta is firm faith, very important platform to come to, which is defined by Lord Chaitanya in his teachings to Sanatana Goswami. What is the Shraddha? Shraddha Shabde, Vishwas Kohe, Sudridha Nishtoy, Krishna Bhakti Korle Sarva Karma Kritohoy. This real Shraddha is very firm conviction that just by practicing Krishna consciousness, according to how we're being taught and trained by the two Bhagavats, the Bhagavatam and the book and the person Bhagavat, all my aspirations will be fulfilled. I don't have to do anything else. Even whatever I have to do in terms of maintaining the family and sustaining, the job, that can also be done in the context of Krishna consciousness. And I'm just saying, I'm performing this activity to support my family, so we can, further our Krishna consciousness, make our home into a temple, raise Krishna conscious children, and so forth, so that everything can be accomplished. My real aspiration is in perfecting my Krishna consciousness. That's real faith. So that's what's being spoken of here. When many, but not all, of the abhadras are neutralized by this service to the Bhagavat, one comes to the stage of nishta, or what does it say? Irrevocable irrevocable devotional service. Devotees didn't know how to pronounce that word when they were reading it to Prabhupada, and he first introduced his first canto. It means that you're not going back. There's no question of being convinced by anyone else that Krishna is not God, that there's something else to do. That this is somewhat a purified platform. So that's what he's doing now. He's describing the different stages of a devotional service. And Prabhupada makes the point, like he says here in the purport, I didn't give the whole purport. The more progress is that one makes in devotional service under the guidance of the Bhagavats, book and person, the more one becomes fixed in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. And so this is an important stage of our development. Okay, we'll go on to the next verse. Now, tada, at that time, he's still describing the stage of Nishta. Tada dadastamo bhava kamalo bhadayaschihe cheta eta anabidham citam sattve prasidati. As soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart, the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankering, disappear from the heart. Then the devotee is established in goodness, and he becomes completely happy. Here's that word prasidati again. Stitam sattve prasidati. He's fixed in this sattva, and he becomes, the natural joy of the heart becomes manifest. Okay, reading the purport, the excerpt. A living being in his normal constitutional position is fully satisfied in spiritual bliss. This is a very important point, is that we should know that our natural state is to be completely happy and ecstatic, and we're not experiencing that in conditioned state. We want to get back to that. This state of existence is called Brahma Bhuta or Atmananda, or the state of self-satisfaction. The soul's activity becomes adulterated in contact with matter, and thus the diseased activities are expressed in the form of lust, desire, hankering, inactivity, foolishness, and sleep. The effect of devotional service becomes manifest by complete elimination of these effects of passion and ignorance. The devotee is fixed at once in the mode of goodness, and he makes further progress to rise to the position of Vasudeva, or the state of unmixed sattva. So there's goodness, which is somewhat still affected by passion and ignorance, and then there's pure goodness, Shuddha sattva, which is the Vasudeva state. So why is it called Vasudeva? Because in that state, Vasudeva appears in one's heart. So Shuddha sattva. Only in this Shuddha sattva state can one always see Krishna face to face by dint of pure affection for the Lord. A devotee is always qualified with all the good qualities of God. Quantitatively, such qualifications may be different, but qualitatively, both the Lord and his devotee are one and the same. So this again, just reviewing the verse. Now, with the purification that's taken place through sincere devotional service, one feels that is less and less controlled by the lower modes of nature. This is the state of this, especially this Kali Yuga, where passion and ignorance are so prominent, as that colors one's consciousness and makes it very difficult to even become interested in self-realization or God-realization. I remember from my own experience, until I had a serious bout of hepatitis and I was laid up for a month, and I started taking up yoga when I got out and took up a vegetarian diet, I would never been interested in Krishna consciousness. Even I was living back in '68, a few blocks from the temple, a few blocks from Tompkins Square Park. I'm sure that everyone knows that name. I was living there. And I would go out on the street, and I was somewhat of a little bit of a street musician. And I would be looking for rhythm, sections. And so I'd go to the park, and the guys would be playing conga drums, and I would jam with them. And I would hear sometimes in the distance, I would hear the mridanga and the kartals playing. I didn't know what it was. And then when I saw it was the Hare Krishnas, I said, oh God, that's just the Hare Krishnas. I gotta play with it. And I wasn't at all attracted. But eventually when I took up yoga and vegetarian diet, raw food diet, and I started to practice, then I became more open and receptive to it. And so this is many of us from the West, especially, who haven't been raised in the tradition, have gone through this these steps and fortunately become attracted to Krishna consciousness. So it's a very something we can directly experience, that we're less involved, less attracted, things that we used to be interested in, or feel that we had to have. We realize, no, I don't need to have this now. I'm much more interested in chanting Hare Krishna and coming to the temple and serving the devotees, serving the Lord, than involved in all these other things. And indeed, we thank the Lord and His representatives for saving us from entanglement in these things. So this is a step we can all relate to. And then what happens is, this is text 20. Evam prasanna manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha bhagavad tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. Thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness, Shuddha Sattva, the man, a person whose mind has been enlivened by contact with devotional service to the Lord, gains positive scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead in the stage of liberation from all material association. So you may recognize this word prasanna, Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma Nashochati Nakanchati. Same thing is described by Krsna chapter 18 of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. And of course, it's also, that verse ends as Mad Bhaktim Labhate Param, one attains bhakti to me. So they're not separate from the process of bhakti yoga. But the natural joyful state of the living entity is manifest more and more, the more we're purified of the effects of the lower modes of nature through basically hearing and chanting and the other process of devotional service. So then this word vijnana. Okay, let me give a little excerpt from this purport. Perfection of human life is attained when one can understand that he is not the product of matter, but is in fact spirit. And as soon as one understands that he has nothing to do with matter, he at once ceases his material hankerings and becomes enlivened as a spiritual being. This attainment of success is possible when one is above the modes of passion and ignorance, or in other words, when one is actually a Brahman by qualification. So one cannot be a devotee unless one at least qualifies as a Brahman. The devotee is already a Brahman by action, but that is not the end of it. As referred to above, such a Brahman has to become a Vaishnav, in fact, to be actually in the transcendental stage. A pure Vaishnav is a liberated soul and is transcendental even to the position of a Brahman. In the material stage, even a Brahman is also a conditioned soul, because although in the Brahminical stage, the conception of Brahman or transcendence is realized, scientific knowledge of the Supreme Lord is lacking. One has to surpass the Brahminical stage and reach the Vasudeva stage to understand the personality of Godhead, Krishna. So just to review again, back to where the verse, this vijnana word is very important. There's jnana and there's vijnana. You read the Bhagavad Gita and you're getting so much knowledge. We understand, in the spirit soul, there's transmigration of the soul. There's a supreme soul, there's a creator of everything. All of that knowledge is very important. But vijnana means realized knowledge. It's the difference between hearing about the wonderful qualities of a certain kind of honey that comes from all different flowers. Like I know all about it, and then actually tasting the honey. the tasting is the vijnana. So when Prabhupada talks about scientific knowledge of the personality of God, he means actually seeing him, certainly feeling his presence in one's life at all times. This is the result of real advancement in devotional service. We hear about unalloyed devotional service. To really be in that position where there's nothing else going on in one's life but one's relationship with Krishna. And the very prospect of forgetting Krishna is very frightening. In other words, you think that's as it said, there's a verse like that. I don't remember the Sanskrit. The greatest anomaly, the greatest disaster is to forget the holy name of the Lord, or forget Krishna, because that's our natural state. We're in the conditioned state. We're living in a completely unnatural situation. Remember, this is the famous verse in the 11th canto. Bhayam dvitiya abhinavesha dakshari shadapetasya viparyo asmati, describing how fear arises. Our natural state is to be, completely secure at Krishna's lotus feet. So fear comes when we turn away from Krishna and become absorbed in the material energy. Ishadapetasya, that literally means turning away from Krishna, trying to forget him because we want to enjoy and be masters of this world. And therefore, Viparyo, our position becomes reversed, upside down. Instead of being the servants of Krishna and being happy in that position, we're trying artificially to be masters of the material energy and enjoyers and controllers. And this is the source of all of our anxiety, fear, and defeat in this world. So the opposite of that is by cultivating devotional service, become prasanna manaso. We become filled with ananda, our natural state, secure in the lotus feet of Krishna and not wanting to forget him at any moment. So that results in Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam, direct revelation Krishna provides of all the truths about Bhagavan. And this is the state of liberation from bondage to what we just heard about in the previous verse, the lower modes of nature, the threefold miseries, birth, old age, disease, and death. Those come naturally. That's not our final goal. That's not what we're aspiring for, but that's a natural byproduct of devotional service. So this is a very advanced state, and the next verse will give the culmination of the process. All right, moving on to text 21. Now, before I read this verse, one of my duties as a BBT editor was reviewing and going over the printed books and seeing if there's any need for a revision. This verse has, I've been reading it for many, many years, and I always wondered about the translation, which now, probably in your books, in the database you have, although we put this in the latest database. That's a knot in the heart. Okay, so let's read, I'll read the verse first. Vidyate vidiha grantish chidyante sarva samshaya chiyante chasya karmani drishta evatmanishware. So the way the verse read for 50 years is, thus the knot in the heart is pierced, and all misgivings are cut to pieces. The chain of fruit of actions is terminated when one sees the self as master. And many devotees have written in about this. Sees the self as master. Well, we have kind of a convention in Srila Prabhupada's books that when you have a small s self, that means the individual soul. And when you have a capital S, that indicates the super soul or Krishna. Well, it's been the lowercase s, and it's caused a lot of confusion in many devotees. And so I carefully went over the original that Srila Prabhupada gave us. This is from what we call the Delhi Bhagavatams, the one he brought with him in the trunks, printed in India. And it didn't say this. It said, when one sees oneself, the dominating factor. So the dominating factor, that's in the word by words, although that's another thing I had to fix. It just said dominating. The last word, Ishware, that's obviously the Ishwara, that's the Lord, that's Krishna. He's the dominating factor. But one sees oneself, the dominating factor. There's no punctuation there. That's not a comma. And so the original editor had to do something with that. And he very nicely brought in the word master, because that's in the last part of the purport, where Prabhupada says directly, one sees one's master. So you're seeing God. That's what the Sanskrit says. Drishta eva atmanishware. One sees the Ishvara. And Atmani can be within oneself, or Prabhupada says unto the self. But anyway, the result is that the translation reads as it should, and we'll see as we begin reading the excerpt from the purport why this translation is as it is now. I can explain more later to people individually if they're interested in this, but this is an important change. Thus the knot in the heart is pierced, and all misgivings are cut to pieces. The chain of fruit of actions is terminated when one sees oneself and one's master, and that master is Krishna. So you see yourself and you understand your Swarup Siddhi, your original form in which you're going to serve Krishna. That's all the result of pure bhakti. So let's read this. Now here, the very first sentence of the purport: attaining scientific knowledge. Just remember what this is: Vigyan, we spoke about in the previous verse, and this is direct perception of Krishna. Attaining scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead means seeing one's own self simultaneously. There it is. That's what Prabhupada is explaining, the seeing oneself and one's Lord. As far as the identity of the living being as spirit self is concerned, there are a number of speculations and misgivings. The materialist does not believe in the existence of the spirit self, and empiric philosophers believe in the impersonal feature of the whole spirit without individuality of the living beings. This is the Mayavad. But the transcendentalists affirm that the soul and the supersoul are two different identities, qualitatively one, but quantitatively different. There are many other theories, but all these different speculations are at once cleared off as soon as Sri Krishna is realized in truth by the process of bhakti yoga. Sri Krishna is like the sun, and the materialistic speculations about the absolute truth are like the darkest midnight. As soon as the Krishna sun is arisen within one's heart, the darkness of materialistic speculations about the absolute truth and the living beings is at once cleared off. In the presence of the sun, the darkness cannot stand, and the relative truths that were hidden within the dense darkness of ignorance become clearly manifested by the mercy of Krishna, who is residing in everyone's heart as the supersoul. And I was reminded, and some of you may be reminded, if you know the famous verse about how the Bhagavatam itself is like the sun. Krishne Swadhamo Pagate Dharma Gyanadi Bisaha Kalo Nashtadushamesha Puranako Dunodidaha. That Krishna once Krishna left this world after his manifest pastimes, the question is, well, he was Dharma and Gyan personified. He came in order to revive real Dharma. Everyone knows this verse. Whenever there are discrepancies in Dharma, which was occurring at just before the Kali Yuga, advent of it, Krishna came and he reinstituted Dharma. He spoke the Bhagavad Gita, killed so many demons. He encouraged and protected the Pandavas as they fought the battle of Kurukshetra, installed Dharma personified in the form of Yudhishthira on the throne. And he left the Bhagavad Gita, and of course the Bhagavatam was also written by him in his form as Vyasadeva. So Krishna took Dharma and Gyan with him when he went back to the spiritual world, Goloka Vrindavan. But the Bhagavatam is here to give light, risen like the sun, to give light to the benighted souls of this age. So that's the importance of Bhagavatam. It's non-different from Krishna, book Bhagavat. So this verse, let's see, go back up again and see, here's the result. The first thing is the Hridaya Granthi. Now remember, this is at a high stage of purity where it is, by hearing and chanting and purification, one gets tattva vigyan, bhakti vigyan, a direct vision of the Lord, scientific knowledge. So here's the byproducts of that. The knots in the heart are cut asunder. Now these knots come up again and again in the Bhagavatam. It's a metaphor describing all of our attachments that we have developed over many lifetimes that keep us tied to this world and the prison of birth and death, the samsara chakra. So once those knots are cut asunder by the process of hearing and chanting, vidyate hridaya granthis, and you may recall that we had earlier this same idea, yadunu yasina yukta karma granthi nabandhanam chindanti kovidastase kona koyatati, that these knots in the heart are tightened and produced by karmic activity, fruitive activity, leaving the desire for more fruitive activity in the heart. These knots are there. So they're dissipated and cut asunder by the process of devotion. It's not, what really happens is that desires in the heart are purified and turned toward serving Krishna rather than trying for the flickering sense gratification. So that's the first benefit. Chidyante sarvasankshaya, more cutting is going on. Vidyate, chidyate are synonyms. All the doubts are cut asunder. The doubts were of the nature of demons. You remember Arjuna was encouraged to slay all these doubts and get up and fight. You know, he had doubts about whether it was the right thing to do and all this. So all our doubts about ourselves and Krishna and what we should do, all of that is cut asunder. We're free of doubts. And then chiyante chasti karmani, all our karmic reactions, many lifetimes, those that are in seed, that are ready to manifest in this lifetime, they're also eliminated, chiyante. And drishta eva atmani shure, and one sees oneself in one's original form in relation to Krishna, and one sees Krishna himself. So this is the culmination of the whole process based on hearing and chanting. So, by the mercy, residing in everyone's heart is the super soul. So let me just see this last paragraph, which I didn't give here. So I'm just going to read this last paragraph for the purport. This enlightenment perfectly enables the devotee to distinguish spirit from matter, because the knot of spirit and matter is untied by the Lord. This knot is called ahankar, false ego, and it falsely obliges a living being to become identified with matter. As soon as this knot is loosened, therefore, all the clouds of doubt are at once cleared off. He's describing how the doubts are dissipated. One sees his master. This is this has got it made its way into the translation. One sees Krishna, one sees God, and fully engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, making a full termination of the chain of fruit of action. In material existence, a living being creates his own chain of fruit of work. The chained victimization, Prabhupada called it in the Bhagavad Gita, very famous phrase, that chain of victimization is brought to an end. So he creates his own chain of fruit of work and enjoys the good and bad effects, experiences the good and bad effects of those actions life after life. But as soon as he engages himself in the loving service of the Lord, he at once becomes free from the chain of karma. His actions no longer create any reaction. So this is the liberation that we're after. In the context of bhakti, not something separate, not merging into the Brahman, or heaven forbid, into the form of the Lord, but rather as a wonderful byproduct of devotional service. As Bilamangal Thakur, he famously sings, Bhakti Strai Stadata Bhagavan Yadi Sad Daivena Nakpalati Divvikashora Murti Mukti Swayam Mukuritanjali Sevatesman Dharma Kamakata Yaksamaya Patiksha. That, my dear Lord, if someone is fixed in pure devotion to you, bhakti stvayi, stiratada, means firm and irrevocable service, as described in this passage. Bhagavan Yadi, then he'll get the fruit of that. Daivena nakpalati. And what is that fruit? Divya Kishora Murti. A vision, you'll reveal your beautiful adolescent form, threefold bending forward to them. That's the result. And as far as Mukti is concerned, she's waiting in the corner there by the door with her hand folded in the Anjali Mudra. How can I serve you? And whatever I need in terms of Dharma, Artha, and Kama are also ready to serve me. So that's the vision of the pure devotee, that you don't have to struggle separately for liberation. That's automatically there as a byproduct of devotion. And then the final verse, which kind of sums up, again, Atma Prasadhanam. Remember, the whole question was, how can the soul be fully satisfied? And the first verse of our study here, text 6, is Yayatma Suprasidati. And now he uses that same phrase. Ato vaikavayo nityam bhaktim padamaya muda vasudeve bhagavati kurvantyatma prasadanim. Certainly, therefore, since time immemorial, all transcendentalists have been rendering devotional service to Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead, with great delight, because such devotional service is enlivening to the self. From the purport, for the speciality of devotional service unto the personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, is specifically mentioned herein. Lord Sri Krishna is the Swayam Rup personality of Godhead, in other words, the original, and all other forms of Godhead, beginning from Sri Baladev, Sankarshan, Vasudev, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, and Narayan, and extending to the Purusha avatars, Guna avatars, Lila avatars, Yuga avatars, and many other thousands of manifestations of the personality of Godhead, are Lord Sri Krishna's plenary portions and integrated parts. The living entities are separated parts and parcels of the personality of Godhead. Therefore, Lord Sri Krishna is the original form of Godhead, and he is the last word in the transcendence. Thus, he is more attractive to the higher transcendentalists who participate in the eternal pastimes of the Lord. In forms of the personality of Godhead, other than Sri Krishna and Baladev, there is no facility for intimate personal contact, as in the transcendental pastimes of the Lord in Brajabhumi. The transcendental pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna are not newly accepted, as argued by some less intelligent persons. His pastimes are eternal and are manifested in due course once in a day of Brahmaji, as the sun rises on the eastern horizon at the end of every 24 hours. So the uniqueness of serving Krishna, of course, this is throughout the Bhagavatam, but famously in the 3rd chapter of the 1st canto, we have Ete Chantakalapunksa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam, very famous phrase which Jiva Goswami has dubbed the Paribhas Sutra, means the foundational verse of the whole Bhagavatam, because it's Krishna is God, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Prabhupada explains the difference. All these other avatars one cannot have as intimate personal contact, which is really what we need to give us to attract us away from our entanglement, especially in Kali Yuga and all of the lower aspects. So we're very fortunate Krishna has appeared just a split second ago in eternal time of 5,000 years, and Lord Chaitanya even more recently, to give us an opportunity to reawaken our original relationship with Krishna. And this section of Bhagavatam, which I thought of, this idea of making it into a book, because Prabhupada he gave so many lectures on these verses, and there was a lot of material to work with, and it's such an essential part of the teachings. And so we've come to about 8:45, or my time, 11:47 yours. Do we want to go to some questions or comments, Ananda?
Yes, Prabhu, we can do that. Some private questions have come. Okay. So thank you, Prabhu. So you also mentioned a beautiful verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. I think it's 1.3.43 about Srimad Bhagavatam is as brilliant as the sun.
Yes.
But Prabhu, from our standpoint, Dravida Prabhu, it's you, Prabhu, who shines the light on these beautiful verses. Not just lights, shines sunlight actually on these verses. Otherwise, it's there in the book format. We take it for granted or just skip through it quickly. But when you're able to explain this in this detail, then we're able to really understand the true meaning of these verses. So we're really grateful for that, Prabhu. And you also mentioned about how book Bhagavatam is there, and we know the value of these verses only from devotee Bhagavat, which is you. So
I'm just a very insignificant representative of Srila Prabhupada.
Srila Prabhupada, because of the association with the Mahabhagavat, Srila Prabhupada, because you're immersing yourself in these books every day.
Books, yeah.
So and then that was from this 1 to 18 that you covered today from the purport. So thank you so much for that, Prabhu. So sure. A couple of questions, Prabhu. So this Dharma way of transcendence, is it 16 verses or 17 verses? Is it 1 to 6 to 21? We include the 22 as well.
Well, you can include 22 because it kind of summarizes it.
Okay.
You did 22. You can do.
Okay, fantastic, Prabhu. So
that recording goes through 22 that I made.
Yeah. Okay. And with regard to 1 to 18, Prabhu, you had mentioned about Nishtha, which is the firm faith.
Yeah.
So what's this Shraddha? There is faith and then there is firm faith. And we read more about this from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teaching in the 23rd chapter of Madhya Leela, where there is 9 stages. So, we know that sadhu sangha, bhajana kriya, anartha nivritti, and then nishtha. So from devotee standpoint who are there today from Scarborough, we're hearing this, Prabhu, maybe we are in this, basic Shraddha level. So is there something that we can do to get to that platform of nishtha?
Well, that's what all of the sadhana that's explained in the Nectar of Devotion that Srila Prabhupada integrated into the ISKCON society is meant to provide facility for that. Mm-hmm. Now, the different elements, of sadhana of course, the chanting and the four rags and the worship of the deity. It's nice if at home, if you have a facility to have some deities there, or at least an altar with pictures, which is what I have, where you can perform bhajan, you can make offerings. I mean, it's a full program. It's very scientifically created, so that there's always a Krishna conscious way of doing everything, and a Mayak way of doing things, as we live our lives. But basically, it's trying to introspect and see, well, here's the parts of my life that are I'm kind of my anchors that are keeping me from going faster in devotional service. And it's just a question of having a strategy for giving those up, maybe not all at once, but diminishing through the process of devotional service. This is where prayer comes in. When you read, hear the songs, the songs of our great acharyas, so many of them are in the form of prayers. They're in the form of appeals, ardent appeals to the Lord. I was doing one thing with the Nectar of Devotion. There's a question. There's a section in there, I think, during the process of devotional service called submission. But we changed that word because submission has several meanings. And when you talk about submission in relationship to devotional service, it means, okay, yeah, I got to submit to the spiritual master. I got to submit. But that's not what's being described here. Submission means like submitting an appeal. You know what I'm saying? Submitting an appeal to the Lord. And there's three kinds. I forget, Dainya Bodhika is one, where one, you'll read like songs of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, where it says, my dear Lord, I've wasted my whole life. Hari Hari Vipale, Prabhupada's favorite song. He said that. I've wasted my life fruitlessly not serving you, and I'm so immersed in my, and usually it ends with an appeal. Please save me. If you look, you won't find anyone more fallen than me, and you're the Patita Pavana, so please, lift me up. But really meaning it and taking stock and opening our heart to Krishna. I like Queen Kunti's prayers, where she prays that please cut off my attraction, to my son. And then she has this wonderful prayer, Twayame Ananya Vishaya Mati Madhupate Sakrit Rataman Bhataradha Gange Vaugamadanvadi. O Madhava, please ever fill my mind with thoughts of thee, not any other kind. As Ganges torrent flows into the sea, let all my love flow constantly to thee. To come before the deity and really say that, with sincerity. This is how we can break through blockages and move to a different level. We have to recognize that we need help. We need help, and no one can help us better than Krishna himself and Krishna's devotees, and to be able to appeal to that help through the prayers. And there's so many wonderful prayers, Pralad's prayers, Kunti's prayers, we can take straight from Bhagavatam. And in the same mood, we can formulate our own prayers. But that's the only process we have. That's we've been given all the tools, and we've been given the association, by Prabhupada's great effort establishing these centers throughout the world, and we have to take advantage of it, and festivals are a special chance, when this COVID thing is over, get together and chant. So that's the only thing we have to come to that display of Nishtha. Anartha-nivritti is can be a long process. It all depends on our sincerity and our determination to follow the process strictly.
Beautiful, Prabhu. Thank you so much, Prabhu. And for those of us who've been to Gangotri, we can correlate how that beautiful verse of Queen Kunti, Twayame Ananya Vishaya, how this Ganges flows to the sea in spite of all these big rocks and boulders that are there on the pathway. Thank you, Prabhu. So a couple of more questions. One is in 1:2:19. So in that it says, we read that as soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart. Now, is there does that mean more than the mind, or is it with the mind? And is it when it is in the heart, it's long lasting or permanent? Is there a significant?
This is of course a reference to the previous verse. This is the Nishtha stage, because that phrase irrevocable service is used here. Say, that Naishtiki is the irrevocable service. And yeah, I mean, the mind and the heart, the idea of putting it in the heart is it's not just some fleeting thought. This is something you feel as foundational in your life. You know, this is where your faith is. This is where your really all your emotions are. You know, is that you are firmly fixed in this process of devotional service. You have complete faith in Krishna and the spiritual master. Nothing can shake it. The only thing that's left is for me for you to become completely purified and experience, you know, the higher things that become ruchi. You know, the idea is many of these stages like Naishtiki. Yes, it's defined. That's actually describing Naishtiki, being completely 100% convinced that Krishna is God, I'm his eternal servant, and bhakti as given by Srila Prabhupada and Gaudiya, that's the way to know him. Now it's just a question of me becoming more purified and realizing, you know, and able to experience the higher things. But along with Naishtiki and along with the Narta Nivritti, as you progress in there, comes ruchi, increased taste, and that you can directly feel. How much are we really attracted to kirtan, to serving? You know, how much are we less attracted to Mayak activities? Prabhupada says you don't have to get a certificate from someone else. You can understand by your own life. This is where the heart is. Where is my faith? Where is my attraction? Where is you know, my desires? That's what's being spoken. I don't know what's separated from the mind, but the mind can be very dry and analytical. This is where you're really, the most important things in your life are there. And when that is more and more involved with serving Krishna and becoming purified, and frankly being absorbed, you know, and being interested in hearing about Krishna. That was part of the theme earlier. You remember, getting a taste for hearing about Krishna. It's the foundation. And the more that taste is there, one finds that, in fact, Kapila Dev, he defines pure devotion as that. Is that as soon as you hear some, you know, pure Krishna Katha, the mind flows again, just like the Ganges going into the sea. There's a powerful flow of your consciousness. You know, you're practically running to hear, oh, this wonderful, let me just hear it. And you know, we've got such an opportunity. The internet is a two-edged sword, of course. It can be a tremendous Maya influence, but there's so many wonderful devotees giving classes on the internet. And there was just recently a Parakrama Vrindavan, you know, with some of the most
Dinabandhu.
Yeah, Dinabandhu and Jagatarani and some others. So the opportunity is there. It's just a question of us, you know, which buttons we're going to push. Really, our destiny is all which buttons on the phone, which buttons on the computer. But it's you know, that's the thing is, what are we really attracted to? You know, like I'll give you an example. This theme comes up throughout the Bhagavatam in the teachings of the Sanat Kumara to Maharaj Prithu in the 4th canto. Almost the last teaching is a verse Prabhupada would often quote. Yet pada ponga japalasha. Yeah, you know this one.
Yeah.
Karmashayam gutitam udgutiyanti santa. Here you go, the udgutiyanti, the knots in the heart again. So it's describing there, and I heard a lecture Prabhupada giving this. He's quoting this verse again and again. And that the vilas, the spiritual pleasure that one, you know, the pure devotees are feeling from serving the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord, you know, completely eradicates these knots in the heart. Karma shayam graditam, the aspirations for karmic activity, a fruitive activity, which are these knots, they're untied or cut. Santas for the saints, you know. But others, tadvanna riktamatiyo. Riktamatiyo means whose minds or hearts are devoid of bhakti. They could be great yogis, impersonalists, whatever, but they don't have any taste for Krishna. In spite of, you know, great efforts and austerities, eventually the waves of desire overtake them. And there's so many examples in the Bhagavatam, Sabri Muni, and, you know, others. So therefore, you're advised to worship Vasudeva. Vasudeva, that's at the last line, Bhaja Vasudeva. So that pleasure, you know, cultivating the pleasure that comes from all things directly Krishna conscious is so important, because that keeps us, you know, our mind in a right perspective, really what's important, and gives us hope. That's why it's described, even once experiencing, the taste, and one will never forget it. Remember, that's in the first canto. And, one may have trouble in one's spiritual life, but that will stay with one even after death. So we want to make this our last incarnation in this world, immaterially, and cultivate this taste for Krishna consciousness. And this is another, talk I can give, maybe. If we want, we can post verses from the Bhagavatam that are, for prayers or wonderful descriptions of Krishna. Practically the last verse of the 9th canto is interesting. The 10th canto is a beautiful verse about the face of Krishna. Yasyana namakanda kunda charu karna braja kapal. These provide entries to the world of, the really tasting. And that taste is so important, and it can eradicate our taste for material life. Okay, that's about how far I go.
Thank you, Prabhu. Maybe we can wrap it up with one last question.
Sure. Sorry,
This is a question from, I think, Amal Prabhu. Thank you, Dravid Prabhu. You are our son. He reverberates that. And then the Microsoft founder, Bill Gates, says richest countries should switch to 100% synthetic meat to save the planet. So this was a recent interview in MIT. So does this mean Prabhupada's message has been heard now? Or?
I don't know. Is it offerable? I mean, I doubt it. This is a sign that it's true that, vegetarianism really took off in the 60s and with the Hare Krishna movement. And there's no question that all the Sunday feasts and the cooking in Yamuna's cookbook and Higher Taste and the restaurants, so many Govinda's restaurants, had a very strong part in spreading vegetarianism. And more young people are into it. Of course, they're mostly vegan, but it's unfocused. People realize, anyone who's intelligent can understand on so many levels it makes sense to be a vegetarian, to eat simply, because for the planet, for one's own health, for economics. So that there is a sense of that, and this not artificial meat, but plant-based meat substitute they've had for some time now, a few years, has become very popular. I think mostly for ecological reasons, climate change and global warming, whatever, and somewhat maybe for some ethical reasons. I don't know if really there's much understanding of that in relation to prasadam, and that's a further step. But it certainly can help us, introduce real prasadam and to go take it a further step and understand how eating can be a sacrament. It can be, and so forth. But I hesitate to say that that's, because it's the motivation is material. It has to be brought into a higher realm, and that can be done with preaching. Certainly it's better for the cows and cattle if they're not being slaughtered.
Yeah,
so positive
at least a two-step process. One is at least there is reduction in the killing, slaughtering of the animals, and then the next step is to bring in the prasadam aspect into it. God.
Yeah.
Okay, Prabhu. So thank you so much, Prabhu.